Story 1. It was just past 11 p.m. and I found myself in the dimly lit back room of our building, surrounded by towering stacks of cardboard boxes. As an overnight stalker in a regular hardware store, I was used to the solitude. My usual coworker was on vacation, leaving me alone to tackle the night shift. The prospect didn't bother me, in fact, I welcomed it. There's a strange sense of freedom when no one is watching, expecting less of you. If anything went unfinished, it wouldn't really matter. Slowly and methodically, I worked my way through the deliveries that had arrived earlier that day. Each item needed to be placed in its respective aisle, so I diligently broke down the pallets and loaded the boxes onto carts. Pushing a fully loaded cart, I made my way into the main shopping area, ready to stock the shelves. Outside, rain poured heavily, perhaps even storming. Through the pitter-patter of raindrops, I thought I heard something, a faint noise emanating from the front of the building. Dismissing it as the building settling or the wind howling, I continued my task. Boxes in hand, I began stocking the shelves, humming a tune to ward off the creeping boredom. But the noise persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to investigate and walked towards the front of the store, peering down the long aisles towards the distant front door. At first glance, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, no signs of life or movement. I stood there for a while, not in a rush to return to work. And then I heard it again, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. This time, I was certain I saw movement near the front door. It seemed as though something or someone was lurking just beyond my line of sight. Though I wasn't particularly afraid, being in my familiar workplace with all the doors securely locked, I felt a sense of duty to ensure nothing peculiar was happening outside. Approaching the front door cautiously, I peered through the smudged and scratched glass. The heavy rain obscured my vision, but I saw no cars, no people, just torrents of water cascading from the sky. Puzzled, I turned away and headed back to my workstation, determined to brush off the strange occurrence. For a while, tranquility settled over the store, almost an hour of uninterrupted silence. However, the peace was shattered as the noise returned, louder and more persistent than ever. Dropping what I was doing, I rushed back to the front, straining my eyes to make out the figure moving just outside the door. With each step I took, the figure seemed to grow more defined. And then, abruptly, it stopped and stood motionless for a brief moment before darting away. Intrigued and concerned, I sprinted towards the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of the person responsible. But the darkness and heavy rain thwarted my efforts. As I focused on the door, I noticed fresh marks and scratches, evidence of someone's malicious intent. It was clear to me that this person was attempting to break in. Fear mingled with determination as I reached for my phone and dialed the police. I stood by the door, clutching the phone tightly, while the operator assured me that help was on the way just a few minutes out. The minutes crept by, and I anxiously surveyed the empty parking lot. Suddenly, I turned my gaze towards the side of the building and froze, the same figure lurking in the shadows. Panicked, I hastily retreated, worried that I had been spotted. Taking several steps back, I tried to suppress any noise, praying for my safety. Barely 10 seconds passed before the figure reappeared right outside the door. Despite the foggy glass and rain-splattered surface, I could feel their eyes locked onto me. Suddenly, they slammed something against the window, resembling a large rock. Again and again, they struck the glass, desperate to break through. My heart racing, I instinctively backed away, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. I sprinted towards the back of the store, seeking refuge in the office, where I promptly locked the door behind me. The sound of shattering glass and the blaring alarm echoed through the building, heightening my fear. In the cramped confines of the office, I anxiously awaited any sound, listening for signs of the intruder. Silence enveloped the space, amplifying the intensity of my nerves. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, my imagination conjuring the worst possible scenarios. It wasn't until the sound of approaching sirens pierced the night that a glimmer of relief washed over me. The police arrived, their authoritative voices echoing through the empty store as they meticulously searched for any trace of the intruder. When they finally reached the office, I identified myself and recounted everything I knew, my voice trembling with residual fear. To my surprise, they found no sign of the perpetrator inside the store. It appeared that after breaking the glass, the intruder had fled. The situation puzzled me. What did they want? Their actions seemed inexplicable, leaving me unsettled and haunted by the unknown. Part of me even wished they had stolen something, a tangible motive, to make sense of the ordeal. But their lack of further action only deepened the mystery, intensifying the fear that still lingered within me. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet the incident continued to haunt my thoughts. The unanswered questions tormented me, playing tricks on my mind. Who was that person? What did they seek? Was it a random act or a deliberate act of malice? The uncertainty gnawed at my sanity, leaving me perpetually on edge. Over time, I became increasingly vigilant, installing security measures and enhancing the store's defenses. But the psychological scars remained, reminders of that fateful night. Every creak, every distant noise sent shivers down my spine, resurrecting the memories of fear and vulnerability. To this day, I still wonder about the intruder's intentions. Perhaps they were driven by a malevolent curiosity, relishing the terror they instilled in others. Or maybe there was a twisted purpose behind their actions, obscured by the darkness that cloaked their identity. The unanswered questions continue to torment me, a constant reminder of the fragile line between safety and the unknown horrors that lurk just beyond our perception. Story 2. Once upon a time, I embarked on a new chapter of my career as a bus driver, transitioning from the local suburban kindergarten and elementary schools to the bustling city where I resided. It marked a significant change after devoting almost 15 years to transporting children. While I cherished the job, the relentless energy of the kids became increasingly challenging to manage as I grew older. Unlike before, the city bus lot was conveniently located just a 10-minute walk from my apartment. Most passengers hopped on and off the bus swiftly, allowing me a moment of respite between stops. Although the actual act of driving in the city presented its own set of stresses, I found solace in the relative calm during the evenings. The city bus company operated round the clock, with only a handful of buses running during the night. Many drivers avoided these shifts, resulting in us day drivers being compelled to cover 2 night shifts every other week. While it disrupted my sleep schedule, the reduced number of passengers and empty roads made the job surprisingly more relaxing than during the day. It was a particularly quiet night, somewhere between 2 and 3 am as I navigated my usual route. The city slumbered, devoid of activity. Throughout the hour, not a single person required transportation. I saw only a handful of individuals outside, casually strolling the deserted streets. Reaching the final stop of the route, I parked the bus momentarily, taking advantage of the lull to catch a quick break. Leaning my head against the seat, I closed my eyes, careful not to drift off into sleep. However, my tranquility was abruptly shattered by a noise at the door, causing my eyes to snap open in alarm. To my surprise, an older man stood there, gazing intently at me. An awkward and nervous smile tugged at my lips as I opened the door for him. He boarded the bus, swiped his pass, and made his way to the back, settling into a seat. Curiosity lingered as I contemplated whether he needed to be dropped off at a particular location. "Nobody else is out, so I can drop you off wherever you need," I called out, turning my head slightly towards the back. An uncomfortable silence followed before I refocused my attention on the road, resuming my journey. Sensing his indifference, I assumed he had earbuds or was simply lost in his thoughts. Determined to fulfill my duty, I stopped at each designated bus stop along the route, adhering to protocol. Throughout the drive, I occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror, observing the man sitting in the back, fixated on some unseen horizon. Though his behavior struck me as odd, I shrugged it off, recognizing the enigmatic nature of the human mind, particularly in the wee hours of the morning. However, as the bus approached the last 2 stops, I grew increasingly perplexed about when the man intended to disembark, as the route would eventually loop back to where he initially boarded. Coming to a halt at the next stop, I shifted the bus into park and cast a glance at the man through the mirror. After a brief pause, he rose from his seat, slowly making his way down the aisle. Yet, his gaze was fixated on the floor, an abnormality that piqued my concern. As he drew nearer, I instinctively turned my body towards him, finally catching a glimpse of his face, a mask of fury and rage. Attempting to maintain composure, I averted my gaze back to the road, feigning normalcy. Nevertheless, the man stopped abruptly beside me, his intense stare penetrating my peripheral vision. "Is everything okay?" I inquired, my voice betraying a hint of anxiety. However, he remained silent. I could feel the weight of his anger and resentment bearing down on me. Yet, before I could make any further attempt at communication, he abruptly shifted his gaze away and retreated to his seat at the back of the bus. At that moment, an uneasy feeling settled over me, and a gnawing sense of dread began to take hold. Despite the mounting unease, I pressed on, resuming my driving as we approached the final stop. With every passing moment, the tension inside the bus seemed to grow thicker, suffocating the air. Glancing ahead at the empty roads and deserted sidewalks, I couldn't shake off the foreboding sensation that something ominous awaited us. Suddenly, the man rose from his seat, his movements quick and purposeful. He strode towards the front, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Without warning, he lunged forward, shoving me forcefully against the side window, his hand clutching a firearm, its cold touch pressing against my temple. As our eyes locked in a terrifying standoff, his expression mirrored the same deranged anger and fury I had witnessed before. I was paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend his motives or the imminent danger that loomed over me. Time seemed to stand still, as if the entire world had been swallowed by the darkness of his rage. In that harrowing moment, the man remained ominously silent, his grip tightening on the gun, amplifying the fear pulsating through my veins. Just when I believed that my life was about to be extinguished, a primal scream erupted from his throat, an ear-splitting crescendo of rage and torment. The sheer force of the scream seemed to possess an otherworldly power, piercing through the night and echoing into the depths of my soul. And then, as abruptly as the violence had erupted, he released his grip on me and stepped back, his gaze shifting away from mine. Without uttering a single word, he retreated down the aisle and exited the bus, vanishing into the shadows of the night. As panic and disbelief consumed me, I hastily closed the door, desperately trying to steady my trembling hands. It was in that moment that the full weight of the encounter hit me, and I knew I had to alert the authorities. With shaking fingers, I dialed the emergency number, relaying the chilling events that had unfolded aboard my bus. The police arrived swiftly, their presence bringing a glimmer of reassurance amidst the lingering fear. One officer headed to the location where the man had disembarked, hoping to locate him, while another approached me to gather more information about the incident. Days later, they presented me with a photograph, a picture of the bus pass the stranger had used. However, to my bewilderment, it depicted an entirely different person. The unsettling mystery surrounding that night continued to haunt me. What kind of twisted mind could harbor such fury and resentment? What did he hope to achieve by targeting me? A mere bus driver carrying out my duties. The unanswered questions gnawed at my sanity, leaving behind an indelible scar on my psyche. To this day, that encounter remains the most unsettling and inexplicable experience I have ever endured. It serves as a stark reminder that within the shadows of the ordinary, unimaginable horrors can lurk, forever casting a pall of fear and uncertainty over our lives. Story 3. During my mid-20 seconds to early 30 seconds, I found employment at a local library. Initially, I worked day shifts as a diligent stalker and reorganizer of books. However, a few months later, a new overnight position was introduced, transforming the nature of my job. The library itself was a colossal old stone building, prominently situated in the heart of the town. Its vastness posed a challenge for us employees to maintain consistent organization throughout the day. The idea of working alone at night deterred most individuals from volunteering for the position. Yet, enticed by the prospect of a significant pay increase, I reluctantly embraced the opportunity. In the beginning, everything seemed fine. Although I performed the same tasks as before, the nocturnal setting created an entirely different ambience. I relished the solitude, escaping the need to interact with customers or assist them with their inquiries. All I had to do was immerse myself in my work, accompanied by the soothing melodies of music, undisturbed and uninterrupted. However, as the months wore on, an inexplicable unease began to gnaw at my senses. I should have grown more accustomed to the surroundings, but instead, I found myself increasingly uncomfortable. The thought of the building's age crept into my mind, casting shadows of unease over my nights. Sometimes, when I glanced up from the bookshelves, the vast, empty darkness of the room seemed to stretch out before me, harboring untold secrets within its countless aisles. In moments of doubt, I would remove my headphones, hoping to dispel the eerie silence that pervaded the library. Yet, the absence of sound only intensified my disquietude. It was during one of these nights that I first heard it, a faint noise emanating from the distant reaches of the expansive room. Momentarily ceasing my movements, I strained to discern the origin of the sound. After a brief pause, I removed my headphones and peered into the darkness. The weight of uncertainty pressed upon me, leaving me momentarily paralyzed. But with a shaky resolve, I resumed my work, albeit with my headphones abandoned. As I finished reorganizing a shelf and proceeded towards the back to retrieve the returned books, the sound reached my ears again. This time, its distinct echoes resonated through the silent expanse. A book had fallen, its impact amplified by the vastness of the space surrounding me. Frozen in place, I fixated my gaze towards the direction of the sound, apprehension clawing at my thoughts. While the occasional book falling off the shelf seemed plausible given the library's size, a sense of unease persisted within me. It felt as if invisible eyes were fixated upon me, watching my every move. Battling against rising panic, my mind spun through countless scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. I fought to suppress the overwhelming fear, reminding myself that my imagination often played tricks on me. Steeling myself, I approached the area where the noise had originated, cautiously scanning the aisles. The last aisle loomed before me, devoid of any misplaced books or signs of disturbance. Dread intensified as I turned on my heels, only to come face to face with an intruder. A figure stood by the door leading to the back storage room, attempting to blend into the shadows. Though concealed, their intent gaze betrayed their presence. Suppressing a scream, I averted my eyes, suppressing the impulse to flee. I walked away, retracing my steps down the aisles, feigning indifference. The stranger's watchful eyes bore into my back, their intentions shrouded in malevolence. Exiting the library, I wasted no time in sprinting to my car, seeking refuge within its protective confines. Fear consumed me as I frantically dialed the emergency number, tears mingling with my trembling voice. The police were dispatched to the scene, and I anxiously waited outside the building, grappling with the fear that still gripped my heart. 2 officers ventured inside, searching the library meticulously, their footsteps echoing through the dimly lit aisles. Time seemed to stretch, amplifying my anxiety. Eventually, the officers emerged, their expressions puzzled. They reported finding no trace of the intruder, no evidence of a break-in or disturbance. Confusion swirled within me. Had my mind played tricks on me? Was it a figment of my imagination? I felt a pang of regret for not securing the front door upon my exit. Yet, deep down, I knew that the presence I had sensed was real, that those eyes fixed upon me held sinister intent. In the days that followed, my manager ordered a thorough inventory check, searching for any anomalies or missing items. Surprisingly, everything appeared to be in order. No significant discrepancies arose, leaving everyone perplexed. Speculation ran rampant among my co-workers, some dismissing the incident as a ploy to evade night shifts, while others questioned the existence of the intruder altogether. Despite the unsettling experience, I chose to persevere in my role at the library. The management empathized with my ordeal, granting me a month-long reprieve from night shifts before eventually assigning me back to the nocturnal realm. As the nights rolled on, I found myself bracing for another encounter, my senses heightened, attuned to the slightest disturbance. Yet, to my relief, nothing further transpired. The library resumed its quietude, a sanctuary of knowledge and solitude, unmarred by the events of that harrowing night. However, the mystery lingered, unanswered questions haunting my thoughts. Who was that intruder? What had they hoped to achieve? The enigma gnawed at my curiosity, leaving a void that begged to be filled. Years passed, and I continued my work at the library, never forgetting that haunting encounter. It became a cautionary tale, whispered among staff during late-night shifts. Some dismissed it as a mere ghost story, attributing the presence to the building's rich history. But I knew the truth lay in the depths of that night, shrouded in darkness. To this day, the identity and intentions of the enigmatic intruder remain a mystery. The incident altered the trajectory of my life, leaving an indelible mark upon my psyche. The library, once a sanctuary of knowledge, had become a repository of chilling memories. As time goes on, I find solace in the fact that I survived that nightmarish encounter. Yet, the questions continue to haunt me, a reminder that some mysteries may never be unraveled, forever locked within the confines of that old stone building transformed into a library.